And the recording is live. Hi, welcome to the SUSE workshop on the 7th of 2024. It's the first Friday of the month, so again we will do the usual roadmap presentation. Let me share my screen. Go ahead. So first things is that we had the last roadmap presentation on 3rd of May, so nearly a month since then. And that means we can look back over the period since then. And there had been some interesting development happening on the side of, well, issues that cropped up as well as feature requests. So overall, we had 69 tickets that had been worked on, means that we are meeting our usual expected mean value of more than 2 tickets per calendar day in that period. We had, looking into the individual projects, 31 tickets in the Open Picture project. You can see that this is the biggest share here and roughly the same value we had in OpenGA project and a combined OpenGA project, OpenGA focused, and QA when it's about more generalized doing and other related work, which is not necessarily OpenGA itself. We also worked on OpenGA tests or related to that. Let's look into those, and you can see where we worked on those. Actually, that one looks like it should actually belong in the Open Picture project. There were problems with network broken. That one could also count as an infrastructure project ticket. The reason is, why does it show up in tests? Because, well, it can also happen to be related to actually in the test code. So with that, we looked into actually multiple issues related to multi-machine test issues. And whenever those happen, we either try to support test reviewers, or we try to make sure that there's somebody trying to improve the code when it's about not actually fixing the problem, because we cannot prevent all problems, but at least improve the error reporting. Also, you can see here that this is what we observed from OpenGA and OpenGA tests. And we had problems with repositories. Actually, that came up, I mean, regularly. Problems with repositories and zipper come up over the years. There's not much that has changed. The individual symptoms are always a bit specific. And the thing is that because we run in particular OpenGA in OpenGA tests that often, like regularly every hour or every couple of hours, we are stress testing also download OpenSUSE.org, or we are providing such high coverage of how to access repositories which are published from build OpenSUSE to download OpenSUSE.org that we uncover a lot of issues. Some of them are known and can also be observed from manual injection, like if you guys work with your OpenSUSE system. And in some cases, those are a bit specific. Most of the time, this is about not the, let's say, the pure official repositories like a vanilla or Tumbleweed, more often not showing those problems. But this is about the same server download on SUSE.org, but repositories which come from development, development. Let's see how the specific symptom looks like. What we can see here is we are trying to build containers, and those container builds are also downloading. We can see that there's a problem in refreshing repositories, which can happen sometimes for various reasons. Yeah, because we switched to 15.6 already, which is currently or is it in RC already? I don't know. It is like just pending release. We some problems related to development repositories, which are something related to outdated metadata. I don't really know, but I think we are getting slowly a handle on that and provide maybe a more meaningful product issue bug report. So let's see if we can help to improve either the infrastructure or the actual code which is involved there in publishing the repository, or how we interact with the repositories, like on the side of Zipper. Next to that, let's take a look into the let's take a look into it. So let me take a look. So yeah, we are still handling machines that are moved to the data center. I want to say that we are slowly coming to an end, because we, as we can see here, this is a list of machines which had been moved. There's now a handful of machines which are not yet in operation, and then it already tends towards getting new resources in the data center which have never been there in before. And then I would say from then on it will be day-to-day operation and eventually conclude the actual migration. Then in OpenGA infrastructure first, maybe. Yeah, we saw some problems. For example, OpenGA SUSE was not accessible for quite some hours. Actually, the problem turned out to be, you can see we also saw that this is a significant enough issue that it warrants us conducting a lesson learned meeting by analysis. It turned out to be that one big problem that caused the OpenGA service itself to not properly start anymore was because Salt mangled the configuration files. And we are not exactly sure how that could happen. That's something which we feel like should be prevented by design by the Salt infrastructure management project, but still happened on 3 files actually. I haven't seen that in before, that Salt behaves like that. So I'm not sure what happened there, but this is what happened. And we have identified follow-up tasks, for example, to research upstream about if anything like that can happen for Salt if others users report similar problems. And then maybe we can learn something from that and either accept the fact, let's see if it happens again, or try to prove how we use Salt that side. We have switched OpenGA SUSE from Apache Web Proxy to Nginx. So we wanted to investigate how the system performance was impacted, if it solves some problems and other problems. It actually helped improve the performance, so we can actually run now more OpenGA jobs in parallel because of that switch. So it was a idea to go down that route. Of course, it might not be just because of Nginx itself, but how we configure the web proxies. Just maybe we are just more lucky in the parameters post them. But also we observed that there are some unresponsiveness situations that can still happen. For example, in the night when there's actually not that much load on the web service and also not that many jobs are running, then still be that OpenGA SUSE, the web service, isn't responsive for some as observable in monitoring checks. And that might be related to other tooling interfering, like a Postgres database backup that is collected regularly and bogging down the system. So this problem isn't prevented with the help of Nginx. So we need to look in the actual source there a bit. We have upgraded multiple machines already to Leap 15.6, also to help get that version of the tested. And we found a handful of issues. And one was that mount points didn't come up on one hypervisor host. So we could fix that. Then what else could be interesting to mention? Yeah, there was an security issue with machines available with like testing machines, which are temporarily up because they're controlled by OpenK. And as they're controlled by OpenK, they use kind of insecure password by default. We could change the password or try to rotate the passwords, but that it would be a good alternative to look into using a firewall to prevent direct SSH and VNC access to those OpenK test VMs, which will only happen in that case for SV90 using the S-word backend. And in all other cases, like a QEMU instance just running is in a separate concluded network already, so it's not like anybody from any user office could access that machine without going through multiple hops, or if at all over SSH or VNC. So we managed to solve that problem by tweaking the firewall on the hypervisor host accordingly. If you're interested, then you can actually see the corresponding results also in our solid state. A bit related to that, we did manage to increase resources by 390 kVm, so we can run more 390 kVm tests. The SUSE. And also that one is related. This was like original problem that we wanted to tackle, and we did tackle it with a firewall. So with that, let's come to the OpenK project. And in the OpenK project, what do we have there? We have we have automated continuous, or not continuous, but regular submissions of new package versions of Audience as well as OpenK to the OpenSUSE Factory project, so that Tumbleweed has like the newest or nearly the newest properly tested version of OpenK. On Tumbleweed, you don't need to add the develop OpenK project at all. You can just work with your Tumbleweed packages. And sometimes there was a submission created with empty changelog, and that was correctly defined. So we fixed that in the scripting, which is generating those. Then there's one new feature: create and maintain up-to-date version of tests, distribution code, as well as needles for the web UI. Basically, what that feature does is, if you have an OpenK instance and you don't have any test code checked out, but trigger tests with case here mentioned, then we can check out that test code to the web UI, so that also the web UI can show candidate needles and knows the actual test code independent of the worker. The worker and also Audience already for years could work with like any arbitrary Git repository that you trigger with, but it doesn't mean that web UI knows about that, and you wouldn't have that locally prepared as an rate of an instance. You would see proper test results, but you wouldn't see proper reference pictures from needles. And that was one reason why we looked into that feature. There will be a follow-up to that to add proper documentation and better examples, so that it's actually more usable. Just keep in mind that this feature is in. You would be able to use it and find it. It also works kind of automatically if you trigger test with case point repository anyway. but we want to flesh it out, make it more accessible, and maybe feature it more prominently. Then, yeah, I mentioned upgrades to Leap 15.6, so we can actually some related tasks here. We have CI container version, we have repository develop A, we have OBS package CI checks, which run for every single pull request to install A. Actually build, try out the package before merging a pull request, so that, for example, new unsolved dependencies are uncovered. But we also upgraded actual production machines. We haven't yet upgraded the production OpenGA machines, neither for OpenGA OpenOrg nor OpenGA SUSE. That's something that we plan for them. So we conducted a spike solution, how to use scenario definitions instead of job group templates for OS audience dispute, or how we now like to call that project Osado. And the result of that spike solution were actually multiple ideas and follow-up tasks how to improve making use of that. We didn't transform all the test plan or anything from Osado to use scenario definitions, but we gathered some ideas of how that potentially could be done, or as well for any unrelated different test systems, how we could make better use. And then there is actually those two are related. An older idea was to use OpenGA clone custom git ref spec, or let's say add support for parsing the GitHub description and comments and trigger according OpenGA tests as part of the CI. We already had the feature in that you could trigger OpenGA tests, like imagine you are changing code in a test system and you want OpenGA to trigger test as a verification run. You can, of course, do that manually and just mention it like in a request, or you could do that immediately by just mentioning a job to clone in the description as the creator of a pull request, and then the CI integration enabled for that test system would trigger tests and feedback the result. The second part, which is possible there, is tweak settings. So you could write something like test variables like foo equals bar after the URL to clone. Then OpenGA would clone the job, but with those parameters applied, and hence you could test out different paths of OpenGA tests as verified. What was missing and what was now added is that you, as reviewers of a pull request, or maybe retroactively also as anyone commenting on the OpenGA test contribution, would like to propose something like, hey, could you test also with this scenario? And now you can instruct OpenGA automatically in GitHub comments to do that. But because normally anybody could comment on any pull request, that seems a bit unsafe. It's like you don't want to allow anybody with malicious intent to just trigger OpenGA tests, because OpenGA tests are very powerful. There's like virtual machines which could conduct virtually anything. I mean, we do have some measures in place like the app armor preventing things, but there are ways to get around certain limitations. So that's why we started to look into that only by limiting to a trusted group, which in that case, as an example, we selected a test maintainer group of the GitHub OS audience organization. Guys working with Osado on a regular base are part of, and only then those commands are actually evaluated. So take a look there if you're interested, and use it for Osado, or maybe if you apply it for other purposes, and that can also serve as a good example. And um, Hitler did a great job there to also comment that accordingly. So you can see here mentioned PR for in multiple repositories because we are force audience scripts repository documenting of that external tool. And then also in let me just add it's in writing tests. So a question from chat is, how can a search in my GitHub user actually belong? I'm not sure if you can see that from your profile page if you're listed there, but definitely, like, let's just take a look at any latest open pull request. This, then you see here it says member, and this is a member of the also audience organization, which means that they are probably either part of the test maintainer group or like more powerful like admins. So that's how you would check for yourself, but also see for others. And it's like if you don't have that, like for anybody else, you would like first time contributor, and it's actually a nice helpful feature of GitHub. So let's like to see if somebody's like a first time contributor or any other known role. Member. Yeah, you can see here that author because like you're commenting on your own pull request and put that into context. And then you can see that, for example, GitHub Actions is a bot, but not a member, which makes sense, right? And author, member author. All right. And then how to run OpenGate test in 5 minutes. That's one I can also demonstrate, but actually I don't, because what we have in there is already pretty awesome. If actually, let's just go to OpenGate docs. So if you follow the official documentation, and then there's OpenGate starter guide and explaining the architecture. If you come to the actual installation, you can already see there's something moving. So as an example for the single instance container, we have now how to run a test with a single instance container in 5 minutes. And that's showing a nice animation, showing the concept on based on the above. And you can take a look there at what we do. So we run the single instance container, which provides a web UI and a worker. And then also in that case, we want to provide the according test. And then with the according tests, we can trigger OpenGA jobs like clone jobs or showing you. And then based on that, evaluate the results, like show the result of the test or actually take a look into the web UI. So yeah, what you can see here is that spawning the spawning the container and then calling OpenGA clone job to clone from something from, in that case, O3, running a tumbleweed GNOME live test. And then we are waiting for that job to be executed. So you can see that take some seconds or minutes. Is only the media check test. Just as an example to show that how this could be something. And then afterwards, we can also check the results with the web UI. So we can see that the internally executed OpenGate job already passed. Can do a bit more fancy stuff like creating scenario definitions, which are, like this example where we have one or multiple tests based on product and definitions. So here, what this shows is how we schedule and according more products is based on these scenario definitions, based on case here. So we're just pointing to an external Git repository. So that's like another example of an actual OpenGate job executed. It's a second job for that instance. So here, test, right? So programmatically, we can pass the results and we can see that it's passed. We can also use a browser, and actually it's a like really nice example of a text-based browser showing the actual results pointing to that web UI. And if the work is done, then we stop the container, move the all data, which is optional, however you want to do that. And that's it. So that was actually better than 5 minutes. That's how it should be. Right. So I hope that this is also showing how it can actually be very easy to start with OpenQA, with the very basics. And you have multiple ways how to do that with container or with your packages you like. Any questions or additions to the resolved tasks that I have presented here before we go into the plan for the upcoming? Like not? Then take a look into the actual current backlog. So what do we have in the backlog? We have right now those 50 tickets which are being worked on. So there's restart of scheduled processes prone to re-trigger by humans. You might have seen already when I shared today a page showing test results, and you can see that it looks kind of different. So for example, you have like new prominent visit buttons here. So this is for a currently running test. Now let me just select any latest finished job, and you can see that we can restart this independent job. And we have additional actions here with the parameters. We didn't actually introduce any new options. So this is just what was there already in before. It's just a visual change to make it more explicit on what you're doing there. There's a help button explaining that. And then what the main ticket was about is restart of scheduled products is prone to re-triggered by humans. Like somebody would find a button, say like, I want to re-trigger this test, but what happened is that they re-triggered thousands of tests without knowing them. That's the dangerously looking red button here. So probably now people would be a bit more careful that actually there's also a confirmation dialog. If you click, then you will see that it will ask like, are you sure that you want to do that? Similar to if you have the possibility here and you want to write a comment, it's a submit comment on all 315 jobs. That's red because it might be more than what you expect, and it will actually also have a confirmation to ask like, are you sure you want to comment on it? Because it's a little bit error. So reduce the duplication and machine definition of the also insist we open QA scenario definitions. It was a small, maybe a tiny task. I would still like to show it because it showcases how scenario definition can look like and what you can do. There are multiple ways how to make them tidy. So that was one simple way to reduce duplication by using YAML features. Reduce duplication. Let me just show you how the current scenario definitions like. So that's a document with 69 lines. Now, of course, it's a not too complicated project, but still we have 6 jobs that we control here with different settings here, different settings there. And this should serve as a good example of how can a modern, neatly structured scenario definition for a test is like. So let me stress again that authoritative dist OpenK is a distribution where we have all the relevant information within that Git repositories. There's nothing in any OpenK database that we need to define tests. We run tests on OpenK OpenSUSE.org, but if we would reinstall OpenK OpenSUSE.org today, or if we would trigger those tests on any instance, then we have all the configuration and all the data that we need to run those tests. And everything which is not there is provided by the Git repository or checked out automatically, like, OpenK is reading those settings and following the Git repository and caching that locally. So a bit more about infrastructure is being worked on. There is also like an experiment running. I mentioned the switch of from the Apache web proxy to Nginx. Sorry. And one thing which we wanted to do and which we is the global job limit, like how many jobs can we work on in parallel on OpenK to not overload that central instance, because you have like central IO storage, and that has a certain limits, and you cannot run like 1,000 jobs and upload them, but you need to serialize some operations there to not. And we already managed to bump up that limit from like 330 to 400. So we can run more jobs, but based on like carefully looking at the monitoring data, and if it does crop up, I'm trying to tweak it to even higher number. I'd also like to mention that we are conducting a SUSE QE team internal in-place workshop, which will happen just before the OpenSUSE conference. If you want to say hi as a SUSE colleague, you can drop in and say hi in the SUSE offices in Nuremberg before the OpenSUSE conference. If you want to say hi over the OpenSUSE conference, we will also be there. So happy if you join us there. Also, I'd like to mention that we do offer an OpenK workshop on the OpenSUSE conference, which we will lead together with Santiago Sorate. So we have an open space there for questions, to work on problems, elaborate on cool ideas that you might have, or just having fun time together. So the next section is in progress. So this is currently being worked on. We are looking into the possibility of OpenK also audience and dependencies in pure SLE. So that would be like, submit all the dependencies which are not yet there to SLE. Any like maybe like the new version of SLE that will start development very soon. And if that is actually feasible to achieve for user-related products, that's a Spike solution, which is Timebox, to just evaluate like what would it actually entail. Would that be acceptable, like the multiple tens of dependencies that we need? How would the and then how would like support statements look like for those packages? Can we, for how long can we support the according dependencies? One stepping stone towards that, but actually not a Spike solution. So this is where we want to achieve the actual goal within part of that ticket, is to have a current OpenK plus audience and dependencies updated in SLE plus package up. So that's the differentiation here. So that I said it before, in Tumbleweed, that's the reference. Well, that's the easiest way you can bring in your packages, right? That's where we have everything. Tumbleweed, you don't need any additional repository. For Leap, there is Leap. In Leap, there is OpenK and also you can run those tests. But for example, if you want to work with Osado, then like the current version of Osado, like the current version of OpenSUSE and SLE tests, they need additional dependencies. They need a newer version. So you would need develop OpenGate packages. And this ticket should make sure that we have updated dependencies so that you can run, among others, also current or Sado tests without needing an extra development repository. And that would allow leap users just as well as SLE users, when they are fine to use packager, to run such tests without needing like any unofficial development. While we are doing that, there, of course, the world keeps on turning. So we are also updating other dependencies. For example, there is a Bootstrap update, which is pending from major version 4 to 5. When we mentioned that specific version, because Dependerbot started with that to say like, okay, the old one which you have is 4.6.1, the current one would be 5.3. So that's what Dependerbot tried to update. Of course, it couldn't, because that is quite some work to bring that from one major version to the next one, like updating how you actually use that in all the JavaScript code and adapting our UI testing. So that's being worked on. We want to prevent scheduling across host multi-machine clusters to hosts that are marked to exclude themselves. For example, you could say you have a bigger infrastructure like within SUSE, multiple data centers. Within each data center, you could run clusters of multi-machine tests among multiple hosts, but you shouldn't do that across hosts when a host is marked to exclude themselves. Maybe it's problematic. Maybe that host is not interconnected to the others, but by itself, every machine could be multi-machine capable to prevent any problems. We can then adjust the scheduling so that there is no no obvious errors cropping up from that. And we had due to actually more recent feature of salt, we are now having problems with how we generate salt-based Grafana alert rules. So we are coming up with a better way how to have those deployment files for how's it called, provisioned Grafana. We had we had multi-machine issues which were due to how we use salt. So that's something that we look into related to various kinds of and there's a nice picture you can see from the data that this is a rather old but still very much valid idea. The idea is to have a full OpenGate test development, maintenance, and administration from a browser environment without the need of a local terminal. And I would like to invite you, if you're interested in that feature, come visit us next week for the workshop, because in the next week, Ina will demonstrate and look with us into how to work with OpenGate if all you have is just the browser and nothing else. After that, looking into the workable tickets, we have the take two, which I mentioned, for automatically checking out local Git repositories on a web UI if not there. And as I mentioned, we want to streamline that, provide examples, provide documentation. What this is about. There's also a task to extend the documentation for the single instance container, covering at least how to trigger clone existing jobs. Actually, maybe we will just resolve the ticket and say what you have just seen in this 5-minute presentation, how it's possible in there and how it's demonstrated. That might just be enough, but we would double check that. There's work related to QM and the QM dashboard, because it already supports in real time updating the information on the dashboard by MQP events. In some cases, it seems like that doesn't work. We already identified some issues there, and something else will still need to be double checked Yeah, I mentioned switch to Nginx. So what we still need is proper monitoring for that. So for example, that we could monitor the real performance impact, like how long do requests take, as well as what response codes do we get? What's the ratio of 500 errors versus successful request response? And some live feed. And I just want to mention that we still observe this unresponsiveness from time to time. And one point in time is when pgdump is running to conduct an actual Postgres database. So that's when we saw that the OpenGL Web UI of Open harmfully impacted. So we will look into that either by running pgdump differently or speaking what effects that can have on the database and then the rest of my behavior. And with that, I'm at the end of the current backlog. My mama already needs to jump, so thanks and bye. Anybody else with any question or note or idea for the current backlog? Nope, we're good. That's cool. So then, again, that was the SUSE Tools roadmap presentation pending. And for the next week, then look out for how to run OpenQA when all you have is a browser demonstrated by Tinita. So, till then, goodbye.